not everything needs to be done straight away, and some things can wait till tomorrow. That question, is it worth it?
So welcome everyone to another episode of Finding Your Range podcast with me, Jeannie, a movement therapist who specialises in hypermobility, EDS and chronic pain. Now today we're joined with a very special guest, Natalie Eyre, who is a cognitive behavioural therapist. And so we're going to, I'm really excited to learn more about this therapy. We're going to be hearing from Natalie shortly. So I'm just going to read you her bio so you know a little bit about what she does. So Natalie is 32 and she's based in the UK. She has her own business called Natalie Louise Therapy and works as a cognitive behavioural therapist, specialising in seeing people with chronic pain and illness. So Natalie also has EDS and her symptoms started when she was aged 2. But it took until 2011 to get the diagnosis when she was 22. So that's a long time, obviously, without diagnosis. She has struggled a lot with various symptoms throughout her life, but through a combination of Pilates, appropriate physio, and psychological support, she now feels like she is living the best life she can, even with how much pain and fatigue she has on a daily basis. She is an accredited member of the British Association for Behavioural and Cognitive Psychotherapies. Gosh, that's a mouthful. There we go. And a member of the Association of Contextual Behavioural Sciences, and both a personal and professional member of the HMSA. So, wow, great accreditations there and qualifications. Thank you, Natalie, and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Hi.
Hi, you're most welcome. I'm looking forward to this because I know obviously a lot of my clients and a lot of people in our community really benefit from this type of therapy. But there may be people out there who aren't really sure what it is and if it is useful for them. So that's what we're going to delve into today. But before we get more into that, tell us a little bit about your own journey, your personal journey, because you said that you started your symptoms at the age of 2. So what was going on?
Yeah, so obviously that's too young for me to remember, but I had access to my medical records with my last GP surgery, and it was really interesting because from 2, sort of every, 6 months to a year, there's sort of entries of my mum taking me and saying, there's something not quite right with her knees, or I just think her joints aren't okay, or she's crying a lot, we don't know what's wrong. And it just keeps saying parental reassurance given, nothing wrong found. And sort of being a child, I struggled a lot with pain, but in really random places, so nobody sort of put them together. So I had a lot of pain in my feet. I've got quite sort of high arches that had fallen. I used to wake up in the middle of the night with growing pains, which weren't growing pains, a lot of pain in my jaw, and things like a diagnosis of asthma, various allergies, sort of feeling sick a lot of the time. In a particular memory of being at the dentist and having some teeth taken out because there was sort of too many teeth for the size of my jaw, and the dentist sort of claimed they'd never heard a child scream so much, and sort of implied I was a bit of a drama queen. But I had some fillings done recently and I now know that I don't respond well to local anaesthetic. So there was all that going on, but obviously no one ever put them together because it does seem quite random. And then obviously you hit teenage years, you get all those hormones. I went to university with sort of a lot of pain, really started struggling with fatigue. And then got a diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome at university. Again, that sense of, we can't find anything wrong with you, so this is the label. And at the time I was a dancer, so I've danced ever since I could walk. And at uni I did sort of competitively Latin and ballroom dancing, and had a lot of pain from that, but not while I was dancing, but sort of after. And when I finished uni, I saw a physio who said, it's just wear and tear, stop dancing for 6 months, come back and we'll see how you're getting on. And that was sort of the beginning of everything going wrong then. So sort of on reflection, my dancing must have been keeping me quite strong. But then I started dislocating. So since then, sort of dislocations of the shoulders, the wrists, the knees, hips, ankles, the jaw. I got sort of diagnosed with sacroiliac joint dysfunction, postural hypertension, and sort of everything was going on. So I Googled it. I sort of came across the HMS website and went to the GP, said, I don't think this is right. I think I've got this. And he said, well, I've never heard of it, but it seems likely. So referred me to rheumatology and got a diagnosis sort of there and then, really.
Wow.
Yeah.
Gosh.
So there's a lot going on.
That was a lot, yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because all the symptoms you describe as growing up, they're all the ones now that you're like, yeah, definitely. We all know now that those are linked to, well, I say we all know now, obviously we don't, because there are still doctors out there who've never heard of it. But yeah, wow. So, and it's interesting that your dancing was actually keeping you together, keeping the muscle tone.
Yeah.
Wow.
And when I stopped, I sort of stopped for about 5 years, I think it was, in the end. And that was sort of the worst I'd ever been. You know, I struggled to sort of move my arms above 90 degrees because my shoulders were dislocating. I couldn't drive, I couldn't cook, I was off work for months on end. And when I think we're going on to a bit later about what helped, but once things started changing and I went back to dancing, the difference was incredible. Sort of my strength increased, my happiness increased, and my number of dislocations went down. And then that even more so once I joined the Zebra Club. So it's, you know, when people didn't know what it was, their advice was rest more. And actually now we know what it is. It's saying rest less.
Rest less, activity.
Absolutely. It's made the world a difference. Yeah.
So, and you touched on university. Obviously, it was quite a struggle then, I guess. You were suffering with fatigue. I guess you had no idea why you were suffering with fatigue because... No.
And I think that's really hard, isn't it? I think a lot of people will relate to that sort of fear, that constant worry, like what's wrong with me? Why am I going to the doctors and they're saying nothing's wrong when I feel like this? And I don't think my parents know, but I fell asleep pretty much in every lecture that I ever went to at university. I just struggled so much. And it was a lot of self-studying as well. So having to sit for sort of hours in the library and concentrate enough with all the brain fog that you get with it. And I think with the sort of IBS symptoms as well, they were quite distressing. I really sort of hated feeling sick, so I wouldn't go to sleep for ages because I'd be sort of anxious about it. So that wasn't helping with the fatigue either. Because dancing felt so good and I really enjoyed it, I sort of threw myself into it, but I was doing it maybe 3 or 4 evenings a week. We were competing every other weekend. We were traveling around the country doing it. I was team captain for a year. So trying to juggle everything whilst battling with this thing that I just didn't know what it was it was really tough. And I got good grades, but I was disappointed that I didn't get better because I was quite a perfectionist and knew I could have done better, but really sort of struggled. And I did 2 postgraduate courses after my degree when I knew about the EDS. And I had disabled students allowance, sort of an assessment and things, and I couldn't believe the difference it made. So I had a proper ergonomic setup, I had a recorder for lectures so I could listen back if I was too tired. And so I didn't need to make notes in the session, sort of allowance for taxi travel so I didn't have to drive or get the bus. And actually, I did really well then at uni because I did have the resources. I had voice recognition software for my essays, so I didn't put extra strain on my joints. And that really, really made a difference.
That's a really good point and useful for anyone else listening who's going to university or worried about going to university. So, you know, these sorts of adaptations can be made then. And they do make and they make a huge difference by the sounds of it.
Definitely.
That's a really good point.
And even the pressure off for things like once they know that you've got something like that, you can have extensions on your coursework. You know, if you have a flare-up quite close to the handing date, then you can extend it. Or I had longer in exams, so I could stand up and stretch instead of having to sit there for 2 hours at a time.
Yes.
And that helps. Yeah.
And so what did you study psychology at university? What did you study?
Yeah, so it was psychology as the degree, and then to be a cognitive behavioural therapist, you have to do a postgraduate qualification. But in between those, I did a qualification in sort of low intensity cognitive behavioural therapy, which was like a stepping stone then to the full CBT.
Yes. And what drew you to this field? Do you think it was your own experiences that you wanted to help other people? What drew you here?
Yeah, I'd say that definitely has been the reason why I do what I do now, sort of the specialism that I've gone into. I've always been interested in sort of the human mind and human behaviour. Even as a kid, sort of I would buy books on it and watch things on it. But to be honest, I really wanted to be a forensic psychologist. So I was sort of really, really interested at the time. And up until my last year of uni, that was what I was adamant I was going to do. But I did a course, like an evening course in my final year of uni on therapy. And I just thought, this is amazing, like this can make such a difference. And decided instead to study sort of mental health and therapy. So I went down that route. And when I first sort of qualified with the low intensity CBT, I actually specialised in learning disabilities. So my sister's got Down syndrome. And I realised quite quickly in the NHS that there wasn't really any resources in the mental health services. So we sort of did this big project nationally that we took part in to increase access. I think it was about 2 years after I'd qualified, I did a pain management course for myself. And that was that turning point where I thought, hang on, this is amazing. Like, how did we not know that therapy can be this helpful for people? Yes. And ever since then, I've sort of done extra training in something called acceptance and commitment therapy, done another 2 sort of certificates in treating people with long-term health conditions. And I feel like if I hadn't have done that pain management course, I might never have actually ended up here. But it is, I find it really helpful as well for my clients that know that I've got a chronic pain condition too, because I feel like it's a barrier that's already overcome. They don't need to convince me that they're unwell, because I know, I get it. I know they're in pain, even if maybe they haven't got an explanation for it. And I've been there and I've been through it, and I know how tough it is to apply this stuff, but that actually you can apply it and it can help. And
I think that's really powerful when you work with someone who's actually been in your shoes. It makes such a difference to people. And especially, dealing with chronic illness and chronic pain, people, I think, people come to see you and they look fine, right? They look well, it's that same, there can't be anything wrong with you because you look so healthy, but you understand that it doesn't work like that, Oh, no,
and how hard just that aspect is, trying to live every day when you are in that much pain and you look really well.
And people you have expectations of yourself, I guess, and people have expectations of you, and that's really hard. So a lot of people might not know what exactly is cognitive behavioural therapy. What would we expect that to be?
So I always start off with telling clients it's not like you see on the TV. So it's not somebody lying on their couch telling me all their problems, telling me their dreams to analyse it. It's nothing like that. It's a real collaborative teamwork type of therapy, very much a doing therapy.
Yes.
So the essence is the way that we think influences the way that we feel, both emotionally and physically. And that then impacts on how we behave and what we do. But then also what we do has an impact on how we think and how we feel. So we look for each person, what is your own sort of cycle going on for that? What thoughts are influencing your behaviour? What are you doing that's maybe helpful? What are you doing that's maybe not so helpful? And the core of treatment is learning coping strategies, learning sort of techniques, new skills to to do things differently. So it could be anything from problem solving to assertive communication to planning activities to help sort of depression symptoms improve, or challenging negative thinking if that's getting in the way. There's literally so many tools that we can use, and it would be sort of applicable for each person. And it's very much like physio for your mind, in the sense that it's not going to be enough just turning up and hearing me explain a technique and maybe giving it a go in session. Actually, it needs to be practiced in between sessions, and eventually it just becomes a way of life and sort of a way of managing your symptoms and hopefully improving depression, anxiety, things like that.
And so with that in mind, what if someone comes to see you with EDS, say, or and chronic pain, what sort of in your experience, what sort of barriers or thought processes maybe does someone with EDS have you come across? Is it fear of movement? Is it fear of injury? All that sort of thing, is it?
The first thing that I've noticed with pretty much any client with chronic pain, whether it's EDS or fibromyalgia or something like that, is a lack of understanding of what pain is. So I feel like when you go to the doctor, nobody sits down and explains to you, this is why you feel pain. So quite rightly, people are very afraid of their pain. If they're afraid that hearing a click always means that damage is being done, or that when their back's aching, if they're walking, it aches even more, that they're damaging their spine, then understandably that's going to be a real barrier to carrying on with activity, because people are afraid. So actually, one of the things that I adapt CBT for sort of EDS and pain is explaining what it is. So sort of the science behind it, why we feel it, trying to reduce some of that fear around it. With EDS and chronic pain conditions, we find that a lot of people maybe withdraw from their family and friends because they don't feel up to going out for dinner or for drinks. They might not be able to work or do the hobbies they used to have. So actually, we look in CBT, what are the thoughts that are stopping you from doing those things? And it might be, I'm too tired, I'm going to feel too bad the next day, my friends won't understand that I'm having a bad day today, or they won't want me there if I'm miserable. And there's sort of some very typical thoughts that people come with. And we look at how do we help them not get in the way of you going to do those things.
Oh wow, that's really interesting. And those as you say, very common. You know, I definitely hear very similar things as well from my clients. And of course the mind and the body are so you're the movement therapy I do is very much linked to the kind of work that you do, and vice versa, because you can't separate them, can you?
Not at all.
Can't separate them. And you mentioned when you were speaking earlier that you also did something called acceptance and commitment therapy. Is that right? Commitment therapy? So what's that, and how is that different from cognitive behavioural therapy?
So it's referred to as like the third wave of CBT. So like we started off with just behavioural therapy sort of a long time ago, and it developed into CBT. And then now sort of the third wave, we've got mindfulness-based CBT, and then sort of compassion-focused therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. And where, personally for me, I felt we'd got to sort of a stuck point with CBT for pain was that CBT is very much about challenging negative thoughts. So if you said you had a thought about, my friends won't enjoy themselves because I'll be miserable if I go, then we'd sit down and we'd say, oh, well, what's the evidence you've got that could be true? Are you mind reading? You know, what's the evidence that might not be true? And we sort of challenge it till we get to a more realistic and helpful thought. But if the thought getting in your way is, I'm just in so much pain, I don't know how I'll cope, I felt like, well, how can you challenge that? Because this person is in pain. They do feel like they can't cope. So acceptance and commitment therapy takes a very different stance to that. So it's saying instead of challenging those thoughts, we know that these thoughts aren't going anywhere. You know, we can't get rid of thoughts however much we'd like to and however much we try to, but we can choose to either listen to them and they get in the way and we not do the things we want to do, or we can say, well, if you need to, brain, carry on in the background, tell me whatever you want, but I'm going to go and do this thing anyway that's really important to me, and maybe I'll enjoy it when I go. So it's about sort of different techniques. So thoughts aren't getting in the way. We're not getting into an argument with them. We're saying, yes, you're in pain and this is really hard to manage, but we have this choice of sort of staying at home and being in pain, or being able to go out and be in pain. And if it's that going out for 3 hours will cause a flare-up, can you go out for 1 hour? Or do you just, could they come round to you instead if it's a flare-up day? So it's a really lovely type of therapy, and very much focused on values. So what type of person do you want to be? What kind of life do you want to live? What kind of mother, father, son, daughter, partner, friend, employee do you want to be? And once we can figure that out, how can we then help you live by that? And it's really nice. And we do a lot of sort of mindful stuff as well, not mindful meditations as such, but mindful movement and mindful, if you're in the garden drinking a cup of tea, can you actually be in the garden drinking a cup of tea rather than just in your head thinking, these are all things I've got to do today. Yeah.
Oh, very nice. And have you found this effective for people with EDS?
Oh, it's been a game changer, So that's the thing that I got taught in my pain management group that made me then decide this is the path I wanted to go down. I found it much more helpful with people with chronic pain, and the research is showing that it is one of the most effective therapies for it.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean, people often need so many, different sort of things in their toolbox, don't they?
Yes, without a doubt.
There's never just one thing generally that fixes everything. You need a little bit of different things that are going to help support. So if I was a new client coming to see you for the first time, what should I expect? What's going to happen in our first session?
So in the first session, it would be very much more like an assessment. So I guess if you were to go and see a physio, they'd sort of check all of your body and make sure how you moved and sort of what was the issue. And it's really similar. So we'd ask, what's brought you to the sessions. I'd ask a lot about physical health, emotionally, how somebody's feeling, and really importantly, the impact that that's had on their life. So I'd ask things like, are you still seeing family and friends? Is your relationship as strong as it used to be? Are you doing your hobbies? Are you able to work? Able to do things around the house, go out with your friends? And so just building up a picture of what this person's life is like at the moment. And then we talk a little bit about where you want to be. So not really specific in the first session, but just an idea of what do you want to get from our sessions together. And then I'd sort of go away and make a bit of a treatment plan, sort of think about what the needs are, what the goals are. And then the sessions will be slightly different after the first one. So what we tend to do is we start off with a review of the week, seeing how people have been. We then review the tasks that they've done for the week before. So what went well? What do you feel like you've learned from it? What were the barriers or obstacles? And then we learn a new technique in that session, have a go at practicing it, set homework. I hate the word homework, but it's kind of like that, for the next week. And then we'd sort of take it from there. But everyone's treatment plan is really different. Sort of really hard to say, but just a general overview to expect if someone came would be to understand about pain, like scientifically what it is and why we feel it. We'd look at values from the ACT model, so what's really important to you. And we do a lot of monitoring to start with, so sort of monitoring day-to-day activities, mood levels, pain levels, that sort of thing. And that will then show us where we can make changes. And it might be that we look at breaking activities down, learning how to pace, how to pace well, not the sort of pacing which, you see somebody and they just go, oh, just pace, you'll be fine. Pace your activities. Like, what does that mean? So we'd really look at what that means for that particular person. And then we'd look more into the thoughts work, the emotions work, and then anything else really. Anything like I'll ask a little bit about sort of, are you doing your physio exercises? Are you taking medication as you're meant to, eating as you're meant to? Because a lot of the time, it's really not easy to do all of these things, and our thoughts get in the way a lot. So we can integrate all of that into a treatment plan, even though it's not necessarily, doesn't sound psychological.
Yes.
The way that we feel and think will influence your ability to follow the physical advice.
Yeah. It's interesting in your assessment stage when you ask all those questions about family and, you know, work, and have you found that, you know, obviously pain is a huge topic, isn't it? And we're not discussing pain as such today, but have you found that someone's pain it can be influenced quite a lot by other factors? So like the biopsychosocial aspect. So it's not always just, it can be impacted, can't it, by stress, by relationships, by you're not happy at work. It's a very complex thing that responds to lots of different stimuli, doesn't it?
To so many things, you know, the way that we feel physically impacts how we relate to other people, how we go about our day-to-day living. But like you say, our day-to-day living then impacts how we feel with our pain. And it's impacted by so many things unless you break that down and look at everything.
Yes.
When you learn those new skills, and you can say, well, we've applied it to this, but this is how it would work to this area and this area and this area. So we look at the person as a whole. It's not just, I've come to physio for my knee. It's come for you to look at all of me.
Yeah. No, very good. And so you would say that obviously it's valuable for our chronic pain sufferers. What changes could they expect to experience, or hopefully a reduction in their pain, or certainly how to manage their pain? What else could they look forward to?
I think that it's very individual to the person, I guess. Sounds a bit of a cop-out, but
well, no, but it is, isn't it? Because I think pain is so individual to each person, because we're all going to be having different experiences. We will all respond to the world in different ways, and how I interpret things can be the positive, negative, neutral, and that's going to impact my sensitivity to pain, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So I think it's very, very individual. You can't have everyone does this and that's it. It doesn't work like that.
I think overall, sort of thinking about, because we're doing it for years now, and just generally we see an improvement in enjoyment of life, so sort of quality of life improvement. You know, we've gone from life being controlled by pain to somebody saying, right, I want to do this, I'm in pain, I know that I am, but I'm going to do it anyway. And actually that was so much more enjoyable than not doing it. Increasing confidence in doing things that maybe they were afraid to do before because of pain, and improvement in relationships. So relationships with partners, family, friends, colleagues, healthcare professionals. You know, a really important part of CBT is looking at communication. So when we're in pain, we expect people to almost be mind readers sometimes and know that we're in pain or know that we're struggling, and people don't always, especially when people with EDS look so well a lot of the time. So we look at communicating in a more healthy way and saying, you know, it's always anxiety provoking going to the doctors or the rheumatologist, and there's been all these times you've not been believed in the past, which make it even harder. So how can we make sure when you go to this one you feel like you've left getting what you need from that appointment? So hopefully people will see a change in that, and just a change in their general, it's quite hard to describe, but in ACT, one of the main things we look at when it comes to pain is the struggle that we have with the pain. So we see a lot of the time people battle to get rid of it. So they're desperate for a life free of pain. So they're looking up on the internet everything that they can to make it go away, or they're doing everything they can in the day to not have as much pain. But actually that's not really living, that's just being ruled by the pain. So ACT looks at how can we use all the energy that you've put into it, when unfortunately we know it's never going to be pain-free for forever. How can we use that energy into something that you're going to really enjoy, that's going to make your life feel meaningful and fulfilled and rich. So it's about hopefully that change in going from struggling with it to making a little bit more room for it, sort of allowing it to be there instead of getting in the way.
Yes. And because I think people get very focused on it, don't they?
Yeah.
The brain can become very attuned to the pain. And so it dominates your every waking thought.
Yeah.
For a lot of people. And so I guess you're kind of trying to break that habit.
So get that skill of unhooking from the brain sort of telling you to focus on it all the time.
Yes.
Because it's protective, you know, your brain doesn't want you to be in pain. So it's reminding you it's there to try and do something about it. But when we've got a condition where there's only so much we can do and we've got everything in place to make it as good as it can be, then we need to say, right, now we need to unhook from those thoughts. We need to listen to the important ones, but unhook from the ones that maybe are getting in the way. Yeah.
Oh, those are fantastic, benefits and things that, are going to be so valuable to people. So that's
I hope so. Yeah.
And then coming back to your journey, you mentioned obviously that you do Pilates and physio and psychological support. What aspect in particular could you tell our listeners about that's been particularly helpful for you? Because you obviously work now, don't you? You've got your own business, you're managing. So it's a really positive story. So what could we say to help our listeners?
So I guess the overarching thing for Pilates, physio and the psychological support is making sure that it's adapted to pain. So I've had years and years of physio. I've done Pilates since I got diagnosed in 2011. But when it's not been sort of tailored to pain and to EDS, then it's not really gone well at all. But when it's been tailored, then it's been fantastic. So sort of for physio, I think I went to Stanmore for a lot of physio because they're one of the specialist centres, and I couldn't believe the change that happened because of it. I got sort of movement back in my arms, my knees got better, my wrists got better. And with the Pilates, that helped to an extent, but until I found the Zebra Club, actually, that's just been an absolute game changer. So that ability to, the proprioception awareness, I guess. So I know we've had some sort of private sessions as well. I've been working on where do my shoulders sit. So now when I'm picking up the kettle or playing tug of war with the dog, I know where my shoulders should be. And actually that's reduced the number of dislocations significantly because of it. And with the psychological support, I think the biggest thing for me was, so at the time I didn't appreciate what was told. I think no one had really explained to me that this was a lifelong condition that wasn't going to improve hugely. And the person said to me, well, you can sit on the sofa and dislocate your shoulders, or you could maybe try dancing and dislocate your shoulders. And I thought, well, but I don't want to dislocate my shoulders. And actually since then, like the more I thought about it, the more I sort of became less afraid of my pain. And I knew that, yes, I might dislocate it, but actually I'm capable of relocating it myself. I'm capable of knowing when it's just a subluxation and actually I can carry on with all my normal activities. And started dancing again. And I can't even put into words how wonderful that is. I met my partner through dancing. I feel like a sense of joy like nothing else when I dance. And it's made me realise that I'm stronger than I ever thought that I could be. We do salsa dancing, so we dance sort of into the night. Sometimes we finished at 3 a.m. and I'd never have thought that was possible. And yet the next day, I remember I went to a special sort of congress and we did 3 nights in a row, and I didn't go to bed until like 4 a.m. on all 3 nights. And then the 3 days after the congress, I needed less painkillers than I did after a week at work. And I just thought, actually, this is the best thing for me. So if I hadn't have had that person say that to me, if I hadn't have had that psychological support to say, don't be afraid of your pain, do what you're going to enjoy, make a life worth living, sort of gave me a reason to be well and to push for it.
That's brilliant. And I think that's really important, is it? Don't be afraid of your pain. How powerful is that? Because so many of us are afraid. Like you say, we're afraid we've done damage, but hurt does not mean harm.
No.
Especially with a chronic condition. Obviously, if you walk into a door and bang your head,
yes,
then that's an acute incident. Yes, that's your pain. Your brain is working properly, telling you, oh, you've hurt your head. But if 6 months down the line, chronic pain is no longer serving us, but we become so afraid of it.
Yeah.
And
it's huge.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So I think, that's such a powerful thing. And it just goes to show, doesn't it, when you find something you really love, and for you, clearly, it's your dancing.
Yeah.
It shines through how much joy that brings you. The pain kind of diminishes, doesn't it? Your brain is so focused on doing something you love, hasn't got time to think about the pain.
No.
And dancing till 4 a.m, not even thinking about fatigue, or it's amazing.
Yeah. I just wouldn't have thought it was possible, but actually it's one of the best things.
Amazing. Wow.
I think as well that sort of adjustment in your way of thinking, not just to the things that you enjoy, but the things that you don't enjoy. So one of the things that we focused on when I did the sort of psychological side of things was I'm very much a perfectionist. So I like things to be done just so, and quite a high achiever. So I like to make sure that I've done everything. I've not let myself down by not doing something. And I think sometimes then, particularly if you've got chronic pain, we can get caught up in this, spending all of our energy and time into doing the things that don't really matter as much at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if the dishes aren't done that night. I can do them in the morning, or it's okay to have someone come in to help do the cleaning if that's, within your resources. And it's okay to just do little bits at a time. And I think that's been another massive shift, because then I've been able to store up my energy and use it on the things that I enjoy. And I use it with my clients a lot, where I say, ask, is it worth it? So if I'm going to go and hoover and know that then that'll put me out of action for a week because I've done my shoulder in, that definitely wasn't worth having extra pain for. Whereas if I've gone out and seen my friends, maybe that will put me out of action for a couple of days, but that was so worth it. So actually redistributing that time and energy into the things that truly matter.
Yeah, that's a good one. Is it worth it?
That's
a nice, I like that. So just moving on, what's obviously growing up with conditions like that, I mean, I as well was called a hypochondriac for most of my life. And I know lots of people out there are told that it's in your head, or you're making it up, or you're exaggerating. In your opinion, how damaging is that for our mental health, to be told that we're making things up, or exaggerating our symptoms?
I know. I've been there too, hypochondriac, drama queen. And it's really hard. So there's a quote that I remember that's always stuck with me, but I can't remember who said it. But it's you can't get well if you have to keep proving that you're ill. And I think that when you've had all of those appointments where you've not been believed, and you're having to prove that you're poorly, to prove that you're in pain and that you can't do these things, and then you're not believed even more. You have to keep on proving and keep on proving. And you can then not get past that barrier to get well, because you're having to constantly fight to be heard that you're unwell. And I think it's damaging because it makes people lose trust in healthcare professionals. So people don't go to their appointments, or they don't get what they need from them. And that trust, that sort of distrust, then goes to anybody. So it's even harder to access help when you're going in already not being sure that that person's going to believe you. And I feel like that, the it's all in your head sort of phrase, there's two sides to that for me. So one of it is, it's meant in a way of them saying, we can't find anything wrong with you, so it's psychological. You've basically, the pain's not real. And that's really, really distressing for a lot of people. And it's not true, because it doesn't matter what the pain is. Even if we can't find a medical reason for it, pain is still pain. But the other side of it, from what I see a lot in my job, is that people have gone to see a physio or a nurse, for example, and people have just very badly tried to explain what pain is. They've basically ended up saying, well, pain is in our head. But technically it is, because it's to do with the signals from the brain, but in the same sense, you know, hunger is in our head and thirst is in our head and feeling cold is in our head, but it's not made up. We feel all those things, it's just the interaction. So yes. I feel like we have to undo that damage that people have done by mis-explaining what it is, to help people then really understand what it is. In particularly when people come to see someone like me, they're afraid to, because they think, well, maybe the doctor will then think, oh, I was right that it was in their head, that it was psychological, when actually that's not the reason for going to therapy. So it's really hard. It creates such a lot of anxiety for people to then go to another appointment. Yeah. It's awful.
And through your therapy, are you able to help people deal with that, to sort of bring them back, sort of validate them and help them believe that, you know, it's not in your head, you know, this is very real.
Yeah. And we do a lot I sort of draw a lot of things out, and we watch a lot of videos to understand, use the gate control theory of pain, sort of explanation. So we look at how the nerves work, why we experience pain even if damage hasn't been done.
Yes.
And look at all the factors that make it worse, make it better, but make it very, very clear, regardless of this, it's real what you feel, and it's awful to feel what you feel, and it's okay for you to be upset by that.
Yeah, no, very good. And on your website, and we've touched on this a little bit, but you say on your website that the physical and psychological health go hand in hand. Can you explain why and how they impact each other?
Yeah, so I don't think I need to explain much about the physical to psychological, because I imagine quite a lot of people understand that when you're in pain all the time, it's just exhausting and it brings you down. You know, you feel fed up a lot of the time. And that sort of difficulty in engaging with friends and family and work and things can obviously make us feel depressed too. And then what we were just talking about, that anxiety around fear of movement, the anxiety about going to see people like healthcare professionals, causes a lot of anxiety. But when you look at it the other way around, so with depression, the main symptoms are lack of energy, lack of motivation, lack of concentration, difficulty sleeping, difficulty eating. To then have to try and manage a chronic pain condition when you feel like that is really, really tough to do.
Yes.
Maybe you haven't got the motivation to do your physio. Maybe you haven't got the motivation to go to your Pilates class. And because depression sort of causes you to withdraw from friends and family, you then don't have that extra support around you. So it can really make it hard to manage. And depression can cause a lot of people to spend a lot of time resting because they don't physically have the energy or the motivation to do things. And then obviously your muscles decondition. It's harder to manage, particularly with EDS. You're more likely to have dislocations and subluxations if you're resting too much. And if we look at anxiety's got sort of a direct link to our gut. So if we're anxious, we're more likely to experience gastro issues. We're likely to have a lot of tension from anxiety. So like a jaw or shoulders or back. So the more tension, the more pain. The more pain, the more anxious. So the more tense we get, and you get really, really caught up in sort of that vicious cycle.
And it is a cycle, isn't it? It just and it's helping people break that cycle, isn't it? However we can get in and help them, either through physical, like movement therapy, or through sort of the work that you do, is helping
and ideally them. Both.
Ideally both, just helping get off that sort of merry-go-round that doesn't stop. No, absolutely. And what advice would you give to our listeners who could maybe relate to your journey? So they've been through very similar things, very similar experience.
I guess a lot of it is a summary of sort of the things that I've said, but as no surprise, look after your psychological health as well as your physical health. You know, don't be afraid to ask for therapy or to go to see someone for therapy, because it can help so much. So the smaller the better is a massive piece of advice I can give. So whatever task you're about to embark on, Can you make it smaller? Can you do it in chunks? So a massive turning point for me was cooking. I'd really struggled to cook a meal from sort of start to finish. And then an occupational therapist said to me, well, why don't you peel the carrots at like 11 and stick them in some water, do the potatoes at 1, and then chop the rest of the vegetables at 3. And then when it's time to cook your dinner, all you need to do is the stirring. And actually that's made a huge difference.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So breaking things down, pacing them out throughout the whole day, remembering that not everything needs to be done straight away and some things can wait till tomorrow. That question, is it worth it? Is it worth doing the dishes now, or can you call a friend, you know?
Yeah.
So doing something that's actually going to be really valuable.
Yeah.
And that idea of communication. So don't expect other people to be mind readers, and don't expect them to understand. You know, we find it hard enough to understand our own bodies and our own condition. So for somebody who's not living it, it is really hard. So communicating really calmly, really clearly, asking for help when you need it, asking for that support. I think that's just huge. Yeah. And perseverance. Don't be afraid to go back to your doctor again and again and again if you need to. You know, write everything down that you want to say to them. Don't be bullied out of an appointment, or sort of, you know, if somebody dismisses it, it's okay to go back and speak to somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, those are great pieces of advice. Thank you. I think that's really, really important. All of that, everything you've said. Well, everything you said in the whole podcast has been fascinating. Really valuable. And if people would like to know more about you and what you do, how can they find out about you? So the best place is probably my website. So it's literally just Natalie Louise Therapy.co.uk. And on there it's got information about why therapy is useful for chronic pain, so the different issues that we can cover. It's got what CBT is, what acceptance and commitment therapy is. It's got a bit more about me, so qualifications, training, personal experience. And then I've started a blog. So I think the first one was more detail about why therapy is helpful. And the one that I'm about to publish is about helpful communication, in the sense that how do you manage when somebody says to you, you look well, when you feel dreadful, or when someone says to you, my friend's auntie's cousin tried this magical herb from, I don't know, the Andes, and it made the pain go away. You should get it too. Like, how do you manage that sort of thing? And it's got sort of the other side of it. If you know someone with chronic pain, please don't say these things, try these things instead. So should probably put one on about once a month, I think it's coming up, but that's got there. And then if anybody does want to contact me, they can. And I've got a Facebook page, really new. There's like not really anything on it, but I'm putting, like, when I've got my new blog posts and things there, they're going on it, and that's just Natalie Louise Therapy. Oh, fantastic. Well, those blogs sound really interesting. I like the one on the communication. Brilliant. Oh, well, thank you so much. As I say, I think that's just been really, really helpful. I think it's going to really help a lot of people. And, you know, as you say, a lot of people don't know a lot about it because we're kind of scared of sort of therapy, you know. You know, but there's nothing to be scared of at all. And thank you so much for explaining it all to us. And thanks for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure. And so thank you to all our listeners for joining us today. So you know how to get hold of Natalie if you'd like more information. Leave us some comments below. If you've got any questions or anything you'd like to ask Natalie, I can pass that on to her. But thank you again for listening. So until next time, keep moving.